Speaking about who we are, as I mentioned before, I am Violeta. I'm a digital adoption manager for live events in EMEA. And today I'm joined by Salim, my colleague from the Oracle Apex product management team. Keep in mind that everything Salim will show today is for educational reasons. So if you are planning to using the services further, you may always connect with somebody from the Oracle account team. Also, keep in mind that if you decide to watch any of our recordings anytime in the future, our products are enhanced regularly, so you might find differences within the menu. For today, Salim has prepared a demo, so stay posted. If you have an Oracle Cloud account, log in and take this journey together with Salim. That was all from my side. So I would like to pass over to Salim now, and of course, to wish you to enjoy our session.
My name is Salim Hlayel. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to some of you who are watching us from far. And I am the product manager for Oracle Apex. I'm based out of Abu Dhabi office in the United Arab Emirates, and I joined Oracle 3 years ago, and I love Apex. So today, we're gonna do a demo around Oracle Apex, and we're gonna talk a little bit before about Apex if you're new to it. So just a few slides, and then we will jump to our demo. So the title for today is Race the Time to Create a Formula One app using Oracle Apex. Let's see how much we can achieve in this time. But before that, there is actually some issues that we have today with traditional application development. It has many challenges. And the main challenges that we face today is you are dependent on professional talent. You are dependent on the language or skills that you possess to create an application. And you're not alone. You are part of a big team. So this team has to know, for example, .NET or PHP or C# or Java or whatever language to be able to actually produce things. And it takes time. It has actually a long development cycle. It becomes unacceptable to market. This increases the business demands, and you will have a huge application backlog. It becomes very expensive to build and maintain the entire application stack. We're not just talking about building the application or developing an application, it's also maintaining the entire stack, the database, the scalability, the security, the responsiveness, the mobile applications, and so on and so forth. Development models, the traditional ones, they lack agility. It's not suitable for rapid development of a new idea. So if a business is asking you to create an app, you will basically say, well, give me the requirements. I need some time to, get back to my language and do the code and test it and come back to you, which is sometimes can be months or weeks, while in other methods, as we're going to show you, it might take minutes, hours instead. So this is the reason behind the rising of low-code application platforms. It has a huge market. By definition, low-code is just a methodology to do development. You rely on the platform to do most of the stuff that's supposed to do. So things like security, like scalability, like easy deployment, like authorization scheme, authentication schemes, interacting with your data, session management, all these kind of stuff should be taken care by the low-code platform. We found that 77% of companies in North America implement low-code platforms, and 3 out of 5 employees utilize these platforms today. More than 50% of companies in Asia Pacific implement low-code platforms, and this is by Fortune Business Insights. Gartner believes that by the year 2025, 70% of the new applications will be developed, that's in the enterprise applications, will be developed by low-code or no-code technologies. And that's up from less than 25% just in 2020. So there is a huge demand for it. From the year 2021 to 2028, the expected growth rate is 31.6% based in Fortune Business Insights. So it's a huge market. So what is Apex? Apex basically is the world's most popular enterprise low-code application platform, and it enables you to build scalable and secure enterprise applications. And the thing is, you do it fast, and you do it with less code, 100 times less code, 20 times more, much faster, and it can be deployed anywhere. It could be on a public cloud, private cloud, or on-prem. Apex is not just a low-code platform. It is actually the platform that has been selected by the customer. And based on Gartner Peer Insight Customer's Choice, customers have selected Apex to be their enterprise low-code platform. We were competing with OutSystems, Mendix, APM, Power Apps, Salesforce, ServiceNow, big players in the low-code domain, and we got them all. We scored the highest, 4.8. And we were the only vendor above 70% in 5-star category. And we got the highest recommended platform with 95%. And if you go to Gartner Peer Insight Customer Choice, you can see the feedback from the different types of users. It comes from government sector, it comes from multi-billion companies, it comes from freelancers, and so on. We say Oracle Apex is everywhere. By that, we mean whenever you have an Oracle database, you basically have Apex. It's a no-cost, fully supported feature of all the supported database editions and all the supported versions of the Oracle database. This includes the Express edition. So if you want to install Oracle Apex on your laptop, on a virtual machine, and you would like to download the free Express edition Oracle database, you can do that and install Apex over there. We have the most relaxed license ever in the industry. We have no limits on the number of developers, end users, applications that you create with Apex. As long as you have a license to Oracle database or you're subscribing to the cloud, then you can build as many apps as you want, you have as many end users as you want, and you can have as many developers as you like. It runs on-prem, on Oracle Cloud, somebody else's cloud, we don't care. As long as you have an Oracle database, then you have Apex. But what are the use cases for Apex? There are plenty of use cases. The top 5 is you can use it as a spreadsheet replacement. And there is nothing wrong with spreadsheet. Everybody's using spreadsheet. It's all over the places. We actually use spreadsheet a lot in Oracle. The problem is when you start using your spreadsheet as a database, it becomes error prone. It becomes very hard to share. You cannot scale it, right? So that's one of the use cases where Apex is excellent in. You can take a spreadsheet, convert it into web apps in literally minutes. Another use case is you can use Apex for rapid application development. Some people like to call this opportunistic applications. You have a limited number of pages, limited number of tables. You can do that very quickly in Apex. So instead of spending weeks and months, you can do that in maybe hours or days. You can use Apex as well to modernize your legacy systems. So if you have client-server application, for example, Oracle Forms, you can modernize that application and move it to the web. So you don't need to install anything on the client and have a good-looking app. You can extend your ERP system or enterprise system. Even if you have the best implementer in the world, there will be always gap for some requirements that are not given by that enterprise system. So Apex as a low-code platform can be used to glue that gap and create what's missing. And you can do that very quickly and efficiently. And you can also use Apex to build enterprise-scale applications or mission-critical applications in industries like healthcare or government sector or a huge company, multi-billion companies. Now, if you want to use Apex and you don't want to manage it, you don't want to upgrade it or update it or patch it, and you don't want to manage also the database, we have a couple of offerings on Oracle Cloud. We have a service called Apex Service, which is probably the most effective way of using Apex on our cloud. And we have Apex on Autonomous Database, the latest and greatest database from Oracle on our cloud. So both of them, they have Apex pre-configured and fully managed by Oracle. As a matter of fact, if you visit the console of the Oracle Cloud, the first thing you see is an introduction to Apex, a blog post. It's that limit we trust that product. There are some distinguishing characteristics when it comes to Apex. Is the whole app development IDE is browser-based. So all what you need is just a URL, a browser, and you can start development. And the end product itself is also a web application. So you just deploy that URL to somebody, and then they will be able to log in and access your application without any client software needed to be installed. The app definitions are stored in the database as metadata. So the engine itself is inside the Oracle database. And that's why we are a declarative platform. We do not generate code that needs to be deployed or compiled and moved to application server. Everything is in your database. This gives us an advantage because we have what we like to call zero latency access to your data, because the engine is installed in the database. If you want to access your data, that becomes super fast. Now compare this to traditional methods or traditional systems or platforms where data has to travel through the wires, go to the application server, maybe comes back to the database until you're settled, and then you do the processing on the application server and the database, and then you send the result back to the end user. Now the user interface that's generated by Apex, the end product, the application, is fully responsive. So the same app, you can run it on a desktop environment, you can run it on your tablet, or you can run it on your mobile device. And in recent versions of Apex, you can also leverage the progressive web application capability. So you can install your app on the device itself, and it will have an icon on your mobile device, and you can basically click on that icon and have that app running without the need to open or to know the URL. The architecture of Apex is pretty simple. So if you consider the browser as a tier, then it's a 3-tier architecture. If you don't, then it's a 2-tier architecture. So on the right side, we have the Oracle database. We have Apex as an engine inside Oracle database. It's basically a collection of SQL and PL SQL code on the database tier. And you have in the mid-tier something that we like to call Oracle REST Data Services. Now, Oracle REST Data Services is acting as a web listener to Apex. So you don't access the database directly. You access ORDS, which can be deployed, by the way, it's a tiny Java application, can be deployed on WebLogic, on Tomcat, the open source product, or it can even run as a standalone. And again, it's a no-cost option of the Oracle database. So ORDS and Apex. And then you have your browser that will communicate to ORDS. So simple architecture. We believe that Oracle Apex does not constrain you. You can start by the no-code features, as we're going to see now in the demo. There are things that the engine will do for us without even writing a single line of code. And there is the sweet spot of Apex, the low-code part, which is almost 70% of the time. That's what you will be doing. But how about if you want to integrate a huge JavaScript library or back-end code, and that code has a very complicated business logic. You want to do it in code. There is no other way. That's the easiest for you, and you want to have the high control. Apex allows you to do that. So unlike other platforms where they lock you in and you cannot have the high control, Apex allows you to have no code, low code, and high control. And once we do it gradually. We uniquely span the app dev spectrum between these 3 categories. It's the world's most popular enterprise low code. We have over 500,000 developers. We have almost 3,000 to 6,000 new applications created every single day, and we literally have millions of applications. I think that's enough for the PowerPoint slide. Probably you are more interested into the demo. So let me go to my browser and start the action. But before that, if you are on Oracle Cloud, you can subscribe to the free tier, or you can utilize the link that has been shared on the chat, and you can provision an Oracle Autonomous Database or an Oracle Apex service on our cloud, and you can start actually developing Apex in there. Where you can see this, if you go to the console, you go to the hamburger menu, developer services, and Apex service is under Apex instances, and you can create a new Apex service. Now, all what you need to do is give it a name. Now, by default, we'll give you an ugly name, so you can name it whatever you like. So you can change the display name and database name. And you can enable the always free, so it will not even consume your credit because we have an always free offering that does not expire. It is limited to some resources when it comes to OCPU and the storage, like 1 OCPU and 20 GB of storage, but it's good enough to start learning, right? And all what you need to do is just put the password for the admin user and create the service. So straightforward. Now, I'm not gonna use the cloud in my demo, so I'm gonna use my local machine. So I installed Apex locally on my laptop, and I'm gonna use that to create the demo. Now, it's Formula 1, so probably you have either a set of data or you don't have anything, you don't have the data model, and you would like to start from scratch. So let's assume that you're starting from scratch, how you build your table and how you build your app on top of that table. There is something under SQL Workshop utilities called Quick SQL. And it's a beautiful tool from Oracle Apex. This allows me to basically quickly create some SQL commands in shorthanded SQL. So for example, let me create a table called formula. And in the formula, I have a URL. Maybe I have a URL also for the flag and another one for image. And it's my formula races. Also, I'm caring about the country, city, start date, end date, and probably longitude and latitude. Now, let me generate now the SQL. So in no time, I can generate the table. So instead of writing all this in SQL, I'm just writing it in Quick SQL. So I'm using indentation to identify that these are columns for that particular table. Now, Quick SQL can do much more. I like always, whenever I build a new solution, I come always to model it with Quick SQL. You can have things like, for example, departments, and you can have a name for the department and maybe a location. And you can have another table called emp, and you have a name, date of birth, and so on. And what's cool about this, it will generate relations. So the foreign key here for the employee, the debt ID, has been created for you. The ID columns in both tables have been also created for you. So you don't have to design this. But in our case, I'm just going to use one table to make it simpler for our demo. So I have that table, it's called formula. It has ID, URL, flag, image, country, city, start date, end date. The long, because long is a reserved SQL, so maybe I can do it this way. And maybe I'm not happy with having 4,000 characters for the URL and flag, so I'll use the short format VCC 255, and I'll do the same for the flag, same for the image, and for the country, probably 50 is enough. Same thing for the city. So I'm defining now the data type for that column. So start date is a date. Now it's smart enough to know that it's a date because it has date in the name itself. And longitude and latitude is they are basically numbers, right? So if I generate now, things are a little better now. What Quick SQL also offers is you can have some sample data if you want to. So if I say /insert and say 100, that will generate 100 records for me. So I don't have to have all these inserts, and this will give me some sample data. What I can do also is I can restrict the values for the country column, for example, to be Canada, UAE, maybe Egypt, Germany. And if I generate now, all these columns will be restricted and it will use one of those values. I'm not going to use that for time being. You can click on the help and know more about Quick SQL. It's a very great tool from Apex. And basically, it's like the low code of the modeling, of your data modeling. Now, you can do also more with Quick SQL. So you can go to the settings, have a prefix, So let's say, for example, I'm gonna call this races. So RAC. I can enable the audit columns and can enable the row version, so I can know how many times that row has been changed. And if I save my changes, I'll see that it has been prefixed. So my table has been prefixed by RAC. Created by, updated, and updated by have been also added automatically because I'm enabling the auditing. And there will be a trigger so I can know who did create that record or who updated that record. So I'm not gonna do that as well. So let's remove the prefix and let's remove the audit columns and the row version control. And let me just review the code and call it formula and then run it. So in no time, I should be able to have that table successfully there. And if I go to the SQL workshop and go to the object browser, I can see that I have formula table created for me. Cool. So how about if I want to create an app on top of that table? So that table did not exist. I created it using quick SQL. Now the table there. So let me create an app. And what the engine will do is it will go scan that table and it will suggest to have few pages for us, right? So those are the pages that have been suggested by the engine. So home, dashboard, formula search, formula report, and calendar. So if I create the app, it will basically go into that table, look at the columns, look at the suggested pages that the engine has suggested for me, and it will create them one by one. So let's do that. So now my app is there. I can run the app. I need to have a username and password. So I'm using my developer account to log into the app. By default, that's the authentication scheme, but you can have different authentication schemes if you wanted to. So it will create a dashboard page. It will create a formula search page. It will basically create a formula report as well and a calendar. Now everything is empty because we don't have any sample data, and this is based on data model, but you can come to the report here and start creating some records for your Formula One app. Now, that's one of the use cases. Now, let's assume that you already have a JSON document. You already have those races saved somewhere. And let's have an example of that JSON document. So let's assume somebody wants to share this JSON document with you. And they say, you know what, create an app on top of this document. So what we will do is we will go back to our browser and we go to the builder and we will create a new app, but this time based on the JSON document. So it's from a file. I'm going to use that JSON file. And then we will call this Formula One table. This is a sample of the data preview. Let's create it. So it will create that table and load the content of that JSON document into that table, into Formula One table. Now I will create an app on top of the new table. I'll change the icon. So maybe I'll use the red one. I'll use this icon. And to spice it up, I will use the dark theme. Okay. And here we didn't talk about this, but Apex allows you to enable some of the features. So you can enable install progressive web app, for example, feature. You can enable having an about page or an access control or a feedback. So end users can basically submit their feedback. So I'll select all of them and create application. So now my application will be based on that JSON, which has been converted into a table. And based on your data, so maybe the dashboard that Apex created for you is not that interesting. So So this will show, the flags, the countries, the longitude, latitude, not that important probably. And the home page itself, it shows these links to the different pages. I think that Formula One search, which we like to call, by the way, in Apex, faceted search, because we have different facets, is a good candidate to be the home page for my application. So I'm gonna remove these two items here, and it will make my application start right away from page number 3. So let me go back to the app, go to the shared components, go to the navigation menu, and open my navigation menu entries, and go to the home. And I would like to basically say never for the condition. So don't show that item. I'm not deleting it, I'm saying never. So later on, if I want to put it back, I can do that. And I'll do the same for the dashboard. So it's never. And now what I would like also to do is I would like to make the app start from page number 3. So I will go to the user interface attributes and make sure that it will start on page number 3. Now I'll apply the changes, run page number 3, and that will be my home page. Now, if I look at the facet search, it's a great way to search for information. So I have all my races in a tabular format, and I have different facets. I have the country, the latitude, the longitude, the flag. Now, these doesn't seem to be that useful to me. Some of the URLs are also not useful to show in this tabular format. So maybe we can fix this. So let's get back to my page, go to the page designer, and remove some of the facets that we don't think it's useful, and also hide some of the columns. So let me go to the tab where I see all my components here, and I'll just remove those facets. And if I go to the columns here, I'll go to the URL, the flag, the image, and make them hidden columns. What I can do also is I can put the country first, followed by the city, start date, followed by the end date, and title to be the first one. Now, the engine assumes that you don't want to see the start date. That's not true. So I want to make it plain text instead of hidden, and I will run my app now. Cool. So now it looks much better. So I have the title, the country, the city, start date, end date, latitude, and longitude, and I have the country facet. And I can search very easily now. So I can have all the races that will occur or happen in Italy, United States, and probably in Australia, right? Cool. So let me clear that. I would love to add one more facet here. Maybe I would, because now I have the start date, so I can search by month. So show me all the races that happen or is gonna happen on April, for example. So first I need to add this to the query here, and then add it to the facet. So I'll come here to the Formula One table, and instead of being the type table and view, I'll make it SQL query. So by default, it will show me the full query, and I can do this. I can do tocar start date and extract the month from there. Now, I don't want to show it in the table. So if I do this now, if I save everything and run it, it will basically show it here. I don't want to show it here. I want to show it in the facet. So I'll come to the report again and make sure that this is hidden. And I will come to the facets and create a new facet, and I'll call this month. And the list of value will be distinct. So I'm just getting the distinct values. And it will map the source automatically to the month database column that I got from the query. So now if I run it, I should be able to search in two facets. So get me all the races that will occur on July, May, October, or December. And I can do further searching. So I just care about United States, for example. So I would know that United States has two races that fall under these categories. They are either in May, October, July, or September, and they are under United States. Perfect. Let's move ahead. So another page that has been created for us is the interactive report. An interactive report is another component of Apex that allows for advanced searching as well. It can do a lot more. So let's enhance it a bit. So I'm going to remove the URL. I'm going to remove the image and the flag. I'll put the title, probably the first one, and the country before the city, start date before the end date, and I'll apply it. And to make sure that this is preserved for end users, I can save that report and make it the default report for everyone who is gonna use this app. So it's gonna be the primary one. Now, some people might say, well, it's cool, but how about if I wanna do more? I wanna, for example, categorize the races per country. So I can come here and do control break. So I can know that for a certain country, there is only one race in Australia, one in Austria, and so on. But there are a couple for Italy, and there are a couple for United States. How about I want to highlight the races that will occur in the coming week? So I can go to the format and do a highlight. And let's pick something here to highlight it. And I care about any race that between, the start date is between today, which is 31st, and 1 week from now, 7th of September. So let me apply it. So I can see that we have this one in the Netherlands. So very quickly, I can find whatever I'm looking for. I can also save that report to my use. So it's going to be personal. So maybe I'll just call it my races. So other users cannot see it. This is going to be only for me. And that gives me the opportunity also, if I go to the primary report and deleted those filters, I don't lose the filters because it's already saved under my private report. So it's there. I can do more filtering. I can do advanced filtering. I can do charting, group by, pivoting, but there is no room to explore all the functionalities of interactive report. So I'll just show you the filter here, where you can basically filter for a city equal a certain expression. That's a column way of filtering, but you can have also a row filter, which is more advanced. So you could say where city and island, for example, and Baku. You can call the filter whatever you like. So this will filter only for those races that occurred either in Yas Island City or Baku City. Cool. So that's interactive report. Let's move ahead. The engine will create a calendar component by default, and because there is a start date and end date in your table, so it will say, you know what, there is a candidate for having a calendar. Maybe you would like to have that, and it will put the URL here as a default column. Maybe we can change this. So if I go to that calendar component, I can change whatever it displays there. I'll go to the calendar, I'll go to the attributes and say, instead of the URL, just show me the title of that race and let me run it. Now that's much better, right? How about if I want to edit my data? Well, it's available as well. Remember the interactive report that we just talked about? It has an edit icon here, and if you click on it, it will basically open a form, and you would be able to edit your data and save it back to your database. But maybe this form is a bit long, so how about let's do some enhancement to the form? Maybe I can have the start date above the end date, and probably I can have the URL, flag, and image in the last, and I can come to the end date and longitude and say don't start them on a new row, so make them adjacent to the other items there. You save that, me look at my form now. Now this looks much better, right? And what's cool about Apex, it does not just create the required components or the form where you can, manipulate your data. It also creates validation rules. So based on the data type, for example, longitude and latitude, they are numbers, they are numeric values, right? If you try to put any characters here and save it, it will not even allow you. So you don't have to develop that yourself. It's there as part of the engine. Great. So I have my form there. Wouldn't it be cool if I can link the same form that I have invested time from my calendar here? So that's possible. So I can go to the calendar component and say, linked please to page number 5. That's the form page. Pass the P5, the ID to that item from the query. So I'm getting from the query the ID column, I'm passing it to the item P5 ID on that page. And if there are any values, I would just like to reset the pagination if there are any reports or something. I'll save it. And now if I run my calendar, and by mistake here it shows the start date as end date, so it should be the start date. Let me fix this. And when I look at my calendar and I click on that event, it will open the same form. So I'm reusing the form from the interactive report and from the calendar component. That's nice. Now, let's enhance a little bit my faceted search. Now, some people wouldn't like to show the records in tabular format. Maybe I have a better way. Maybe Apex has another way to show the data. So if I go to that page and open my formula classic report, that's a classic report, that's what we call it, it's classic report. And I'm gonna change this to cards region. And if I go to the attributes of the cards, I can select the primary key. I can select the title of the card, and I'll map it to the title column. And for the subtitle, I'll just put probably the city name. And I have also the icon and badge. Maybe I can put a nice badge. So we remember that there was an image column. So maybe let's map the image and see how my report will look like. Now that's much better, right? Now I could enhance this. So if I look at this image, it seems to be very tiny. Probably there is another thing that we can put there, and maybe we can put a bigger image here that references that particular race. So if I come back here and I look at the icon and badge attribute, there is something called flag column. So maybe I'll replace that with a flag column. And for the media, I will use the image column. Now let me run it. Now that's much better, right? So now I can search for my races in cards way. So you have your data in cards region, and your columns or values that comes from the query are mapped to the certain parts of that card. Fantastic. Now let's do a little bit more complicated stuff. Now this app might have an advanced requirement where not anybody can change the app, so only certain people. So what I will do is I will go to the users. So by default, my user, which is Hlayel, is basically the admin user. That's the first user that created the app, and by default, it will make it the admin. If I go to the administration section and I open the users here under the access control, because we enabled the feature, we enabled that feature called access control. So I can see that my user is the administrator. So I can add other users and make them contributor, for example. So with less privilege. So let me add a user first. Let me call that user Salim. And let's put anything here for the email. And let me put a password. and I'll create the user. Perfect. So Salim has been created, and now I can log into that app as Salim. But what I would like to do is first, let me have Salim added as a contributor to the app. Salim is there, but he's a contributor. And Hlayel is still the admin, right? So if I go to the report, this is the risky part because it's the form. It's the one that will write back. And what I would like to do here is, instead of enabling everybody to process that form, I'll just make sure that I would go to the processing section of that form and say that nobody should process the data in that form except administrators. So people with administration rights, only Hlayel in currently will be able to do that. And what I will do more is, how about if I would like to create a workflow or an approval, at least an approval to change the title of that trace. And in this case, any person or any end user who's using my app will be able to change it, but it will not be reflected right away. So it has to go through an approval. It will go to the admin or the potential owner of that task. Once it gets approved, then the title will change. So to do that, I will go to the form here and I will add a couple of things. So what I will do is I will duplicate the title a couple of times. So this one, I'll just make it display, and this one, I'll just call it new title. And for the display, it's not gonna be a text field. And now for the title, because it should be restricted, so I would like to make sure that only admins can see it, while the display and new titles field, I would like to grant this to contributors. Remember, we created a user called Salim, the contributor for the app. So Salim, when he logs in, he will not be able to see the original field, the title field. He will see the display field, and he will see a new title item. And that title item, I'm not gonna even link it to the table. So it's not gonna be, it's just gonna be there to submit it to a task that will run in the background, and based on the approval of that task, then the actual title will be updated. So let me save that. And if I log in now as Salim, all right, so it asks me to change the password. All right. Security rules, so we have to. Oops. I hope I put it correctly. Yep. Perfect. So if I go to the report now, I'll try to open the form. Now, I don't see the actual title. I see the new title field, and I see the actual title as only display, as display only item, right? So now what we will do is we will go very quickly to something called workflows and automation, and we will create a task definition to enable the approval mechanism. So what we will say is title changed, so that's the name of that task. And the subject of that could be title change from the original title to P_new title. That's the parameter that we will give to the task definition. Now, bear in mind that this task is just a task definition. There is no actual task yet. We will create the task on the form when we edit the title. Now, we'll create the task definition. And here we will say, you know what? I want to get the title from the Formula 1 table, where ID, that's the ID that I'm concerned on, is actually the Apex $task_primary key. So that's the task ID. So the moment we create it, that will be passed to the query here, and I can get the title from the table. Now I have the whole of the title. I will use it for my subject, and I would like to have a potential owner. So my potential owner could be static, or it could be based on a SQL query, on a function body, or expression. So in my case, I will use static. So Hlayel is the only potential owner that can approve such kind of tasks. And I would like to have P new title as a parameter to that task definition. And let me save everything. Now, if I look to that task definition, there is one field here that says task details page number. So if I have created that ahead of time, I can link it, or I can create it on the fly here. We'll talk about this later, and I'll show it to you. So I created a task details page, and now I will be able, what's missing is whenever this task is created, this is the potential owner, these are the values that I can reference. I would like to create an action. And my action is update. So I have it here, so I don't have to type. Update my Formula 1 table, specifically the title table, with the new parameter that's passed to this task, where the ID is Apex $task PK. And this should happen whenever that the task is approved and complete. So if I try to do it now, sure, it asks me to give a name. So update title, that's the action name, and the reference is 10. And now I should be able to create it. So perfect. So I have a task created for me, ready to be used in my page. So I'm coming back to this page now, and I will like to allow the end users to initiate that task. So I can come to the processes, create a new process, and call it start title change task. And the type of this will be a human task, and I'm creating a new task from the definition. Which definition? Title change. What's the details primary key here? It's P5 ID, the ID of the current record that I'm actually working on. The new title, again, is I'm referencing it to one of the items in the page itself, which is the P5 new title. So let me save now. Now, last thing that I would like to do is, for approvals to work or to be visible to you, Apex allows you to create what we like to call unified task list. So if I go to the unified task list, I will be able to create something called my tasks. So if there is anything pending for me to approve, that page will be created for me. So you don't have to write any code, it will be created for you. And another page that I would like to create is to have a page for all the tasks initiated by me. Initiated by me. So a couple of pages related to the approvals. And now if I run my page again, I will have my task initiated by me. Now let's try to change the title for this. And instead of this, maybe I will put, I don't know, to 2030. Now I will apply. So now the task has been initiated by me. And remember the detail page that was created for us in the task definition? That's the detail page. So you don't have even to create it. I can change the priority if I want to and make it urgent. I can see the details of the task definition. So I'm giving it the new title. That's the new title. And the owner now is Hlayel. He's the person who's supposed to approve it. I can put a comment if I want to and see the history of all the tasks. But what I will do, because we don't have enough time, I will just go and log in as Hlayel and go to my tasks page. And now what will happen is I will see a task assigned to me, and it's up to me to approve it or reject it. I can see, look at the details. I can delegate it to someone else also to approve it instead of me if there is anyone defined as a potential owner, but currently it's only one owner, as you still remember, so it's only me. But if we have more than one owner, I can delegate it to that owner to approve. So let me approve it and see if it will change to 2030 or not. So if I'll go now to the reports and go to the primary reports, so it has been changed already to 2030. So perfect. So if I log in now as Salim, I can go to those tasks initiated by me and see that this has been completed and has been approved by Hlayel. So that's it from me. We are restricted by time, but if you have more time, you can do much more with Apex. So Apex allows you to create applications literally in minutes. If you have the data model, you can import it. You can even build your application on top of existing tables. You can write your own model using quick SQL, as we have seen in the demo. I hope you enjoyed it. Probably it's a time for questions, Violeta.
That is all from the useful resources part. Thank you all for attending. And before we end the call, we are ready to take questions. So let's see if there are open questions. I see that no, we have provided answers to all of them. All right, we're going to share the recorded video on Slack. Sure. Okay, so before we end the call, I would like to launch the last poll of today's session. So please provide your answers. They will help us a lot to improve our work and to see what would you like to see next within the cloud coaching sessions. So there are two questions, 1 minute to provide your answers, and then we can close the meeting. So that being said, I would like to, and I see that there are no open questions, I would like to consider this meeting to an end. I would like to say a big thank you to Salim and Roopesh for presenting and providing answers to all the questions. I would like to thank you all for attending the call, and of course, we are waiting you in upcoming events. Thank you and have a great day.